Welcome to the lab. Today we're making a walnut ring box that features a brass inlaid star map on the top. When working with power tools, I always wear a silicone ring, so I need a place to store my nicer metal wedding band. I even made the box large enough where my wife can store her wedding ring if she chooses to as well. As always, I start my builds off on the joiner and planer. For this build, I start with 4/4 walnut and mill it down to 3/4 of an inch. Once my stock is milled, I can head to the table saw to rip my stock down to width. But first, I make sure my blade is square to the table. I set my blade height just over my stock and set my fence to rip at 2 3/8 inches. Once my stock is cut to width, I can begin the resawing process. This process starts out on the table saw where I rip one side of my board down the center. I rotate my stock 180 degrees and rip the other side down the center. Next, I head over to the bandsaw and resaw down my kerf line. This will remove the excess material in the center, leaving me with 2 halves. Once my walnut is resawn, I head back to the planer and bring my stock down to the final thickness of 1/4 of an inch. I mark my edge with a reference triangle so I can keep track of my book match. With a normal box, you'd only use one board where each end meets up and you cut your 4 sides out of a single piece. This creates a section of mismatched grain. With this box, we are using a resaw method. 2 sides come out of each board, thus creating continuous grain around the box. In order to have a seamless grain wrap around my box, I must cut my stock to approximate length on the chop saw before milling my ends to 45 degrees. I can use one book match set for this box and I'll save the other one for a future project. Before cutting my parts, I add 2 dados using the table saw. These slots will be used for the lid and bottom. Next, I set my table saw blade to 45 degrees using a Wixie digital angle gauge. Using a cross-cutting sled, I can cut my sides to length. For this box, I have an exterior dimension of 3 5/8 inches. Don't forget to mark each one of your pieces so you can put them back in order when you finish cutting them up. I use a stop block on my sled to ensure each one of my pieces is cut to the exact same length. I put my sides together to get a preview of the overall dimension. Moving over to the top. For the top, I've chosen to inlay the star pattern from the night I was married to my wife. I use Super 77 to adhere the paper star map to the lid. I use paper to protect my workbench and the excess wood from the Super 77. I select a couple pieces of brass stock and pair it with a nearly identical sized drill bit. For the best result, I drill my holes using the drill press. I only drill about halfway through my stock since I don't want glue dripping out the other side. I took creative liberty and made the stars slightly larger than the ones on my pattern. Once all my holes are drilled, I can head over to the metal shop. I bevel the end of each of my inlays and cut it to approximate length on the metal bandsaw. When gluing inlays into place, I use super glue. I set my inlay using tweezers and hammer it into place. I level the brass to the wood on the thickness sander. I take very light passes since I don't want to overheat the brass and super glue. I move over to the chop saw and cut my top and bottom to size. I cut around the perimeter of my piece in order to create a reveal around the top. I refine the reveal by chamfering the edge of my lid. I dry fit all my parts prior to glue up to make sure everything looks good. I'm happy with the outcome, so I get ready for the glue up. Before I glue up, I chamfer my interior edges. This would be difficult to do once the box is all assembled. My favorite way to glue up miter boxes is with packing tape. It's clear so you can check your edges and it won't slide around like a clamp. Before I glue my parts, I protect my surfaces with wax. This will make glue cleanup super easy. I use Titebond 2 wood glue and apply just a little bit to each miter. I finish taping all the parts together, then add shims to the top to make sure the reveal is even. Once everything's glued up, I can check to make sure everything is square. The following day, I can remove the shims and tape. I remove the tape slowly since I don't want to remove any of the wood fibers along with the tape. End grain to end grain is a pretty weak joint. In order to strengthen up the joint, I add splines. I mark my splines out with a square and a white colored pencil. My favorite way to cut splines on smaller boxes is with a handsaw. Once all my splines are cut, I can go ahead and glue wood veneer into the slots. I take great care to make sure all the splines are fully seated. Once my glue is set on the splines, I can head over to the bandsaw and cut off the excess. I use a belt sander to flush up the shims to my box. Time to separate the top from the bottom. I install a sharp blade in order to minimize chip out. I set my blade height just shy of the thickness of the side. I slowly cut each side, rotating 90 degrees after each cut. For this box, I have chosen to make the lid press fit. In order to do this, I need to cut thin strips of wood that I'll attach to the lid. I cut my lid stock slightly larger than the interior dimension of my box. I refine the fit on the belt sander using my 45-degree jig. I protect the lip of my box using wax, then glue the strips to the top. I use a hammer to ensure all the pieces are properly seated. While the top is drying, I head back to the table saw to mill a strip of walnut to 1/2 of an inch by 1/2 of an inch. These strips will be used in the interior of the box to hold the ring foam in place. Just like the lid stock, I cut my 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch material slightly larger than the interior dimension of the box. I size the pieces using the disc sander. Before I glue the pieces down to the bottom of the box, I clean up excess glue using a chisel. Using my block plane, I break the edges of the pieces that are going to be in the interior of the box. I only add glue to the bottom of the piece since I don't want to limit wood movement. In preparation for sanding, I remove any excess glue squeeze out using a chisel. I sand all my surfaces with a sanding block. I work from 150 all the way up to 220 grit. My lid was a little tight after sanding, so I used a shoulder plane to refine the fit. To prepare for finish, I blow out the excess sawdust with compressed air. Once the grain is free of dust, I can spray everything down with a mist of water to raise the grain. Once the box is dry, I go ahead and sand the surfaces using 220 to remove any of the grain that's been raised. For finish, I've opted to use spray-on polyurethane since it's super durable and easy to apply. In total, I apply 4 coats and I sand between each one. The final step is press fitting the ring foam in the center of the box. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time in the lab.